Mitchell has his head up, takes one for feet.
Get that weak stuff out of here.
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. On today's episode, we will be going over the Cleveland Cavaliers' two missing pieces, Jarrett Allen and Darius Garland. We'll talk about how their absence has impacted the team so far and what change they will bring once they're back into the lineup. I'm Tony Pesta, joined by Jackson Flickinger and Corey Walsh, and let's jump right into this with a question that I'm going to pose to both of you. I just want to hear your answers very quick, and then we'll get into why afterward. Who have the Cavaliers missed more so far, Garland or Allen?
I'm going to say Allen. Just like looking at how this team is defending and stuff, you can tell that they really, really need Jarrett Allen.
I agree with Jackson. I think defense has been more of the issue through the first few games rather than the offense. I think with the talent that they have, they can trudge by without Darius leading the front.
Yeah. I do want to say the offense has been bad, so don't want to discount. Well, like the team has been bad. So like the defense, you're looking at the 16th ranked defense. Offense is 23rd. They've been a bad team.
I went back and forth on my answer. I think I'll go with Allen too, though, just because I think Allen's going to impact both sides of the floor. He's going to strengthen their defense, and I think he opens things up on offense in a way that we'll get to. Whereas Garland, really, he's going to juice the offense a lot, but he's not going to bring too much to the defensive end. I think he's better than he gets credit for, but I guess the counter argument there, not that it's a competition, but the counter argument would be Garland is going to help the offense so much that it, outweighs whatever Allen brings on both ends. But let's start off with Allen. And Jackson, what do you think, Allen? What do you think the Cavs have been missing most about not having Jarrett Allen on a nightly basis?
Well, what they've been missing is not having a center. And this is the most frustrating part of this whole thing. It all comes back to Evan Mobley. And when we're talking about Evan Mobley, we've been talking about how does he impact the game the most? What does he do on the offensive end? What does he do best on the defensive end? And how can he impact things? And really, he's somebody who he should be a center just because of his offensive profile. He doesn't have the offensive profile of someone who's a 4. And he should be somebody who holds up on the defensive end. And really, that just hasn't been the case this season. And it's really tough to overlook it. And it's really tough to you don't want to be too hard, but it's Evan Mobley there's a reason why we've said that he's a generational talent, and he hasn't shown that he is. And it's really disappointing when you see somebody like Chet Holmgren out there who is younger than him, who I don't think is athletically gifted as him, just being a defensive center and being a modern offensive player. And Evan Mobley's just really not holding up his end of the deal for this team. And that's why they need Jarrett Allen.
So I don't want to dive into the Mobley discourse because we already talked about this on the last episode. We definitely disagree there, but let's try and keep the focus on Jarrett Allen for today. I do agree though, and bringing up Mobley is fair because I think there was kind of questions heading into really just Mobley's career in general. Is he going to be a center long-term? Are we going to have to split Mobley and Allen up? And I think if the Cavs had traded Jarrett Allen in the summer for any wing, whoever, it doesn't matter who you put there. But if the Cavs didn't have Jarrett Allen returning to the lineup at some point, I think we would be looking at this right now oh man, they need a true center to play next to Mobley, or else he's really not going to be able to hold his own every single night going against bigger opponents. I think he's been very good defensively. I think he's just spread very thin. But to refocus this on Allen, what Allen brings to the floor is just so different from what Mobley does defensively. He is a true anchor at heart, and he's able to absorb a lot of contact on a nightly basis down low. He's a great rebounder. He's a great rim protector. And even on the offensive end, he's the best screener on this team. Maybe Tristan Thompson could get in there now that he apparently still has some gas left in the tank. And I even think Tristan being so impactful in a surprising way just shows how badly they needed someone like Jarrett Allen, someone who can actually play the center position.
But isn't that the whole problem, though? That's the whole issue. They shouldn't be missing Jarrett Allen this bad. Right, well, but it's all the things that you're describing that Jarrett Allen does, why can't Evan Mobley do them if he's who we thought he was?
Because, well, I think Evan Mobley's at his best when he's able to help, be a help defender rather than kind of post it in the paint. And right now he's like even just look at the lineup around him isn't exactly helping him. He has George Niang as his running mate in the front court. So yeah, we don't have to well, we will talk about the front court depth, but
he's awful on defense.
Yes. I think when Allen comes back, it's just going to take pressure off of Mobley to be that rim protector, because he's great at rotating to protect the rim. But if you have him parked down there, you're not really getting the most out of him. What you want Mobley to be able to do is to be that jack of all trades defensively and have Allen kind of as your centerpiece down there holding down the fort.
I feel like we're in the Larry Nance Jr. problem, Corey's favorite player. And it's like the problem with Larry Nance Jr. is he was a 5 on center, he was a 5 on offense, but on defense he was a 4 because he couldn't protect the rim. So you have to find creative ways to use him, and that's where Evan Mobley is now. That's where Evan Mobley was, but you were hoping Evan Mobley is going to graduate to become either somebody who can hold his own as a 4 on offense, or somebody who needs to be who becomes a 5. And right now in his development, you're looking at somebody who is stuck between the worst of both worlds, And then if you're trying to convince Donovan Mitchell to stay on this team, Evan Mobley's the guy who's going to get him to sign the contract. And he should be flourishing on offense. He has 4 shooters out there. You just mentioned Niang. He has 4 shooters out there, and it's never been harder for him on the offensive end. So,
and I think that's the Darius Garland dilemma, though, too.
Right.
Yes. No one, I think Mobley is probably, out of everyone on the roster, maybe been most impacted by the fact that Jarrett Allen and Darius Garland aren't out there, because I think Allen helps him on the offensive end. When Allen's out there, there's a true rim presence down low where it's if Allen catches the ball in the restricted area, that's a guaranteed 2 points basically. Right. So teams work very hard to keep Allen from catching the ball down there, and that opens up space for Mobley to work in that in-between game, where right now Mobley, it feels like he's catching the ball, he's trying to barrel his way to the rim, which he's had some success doing, but whenever he gets walled off, and we mentioned this on the last episode, when he gets walled off, that's when he takes those weird, awkward in-between shots. Whereas when Allen's out there, it feels more natural. It's he's catching it, he's in his spot, he knows this is his spot. Allen's already down in the paint. So it's either I'm shooting a floater or I'm passing it. And right now there's kind of this indecision that I think is just coming from being out of position for the first time really in his career. I think he's had games without Jarrett Allen out there before, but this is the first time where they're hey, you're going to play center every night. So not having Darius Garland out there is obviously hurting him offensively, and not having Allen is hurting him on both ends of the floor.
And this is where I kind of am wondering, when you're looking at the natural comparison is Chet, and you're looking at Chet, he's coming in day one playing center. It felt like Allen out there, when it was we're going to pair him with Allen, it felt like that's the training wheels that okay, we're going to put him out there. He doesn't have to have all the wear and tear of a center. He gets to kind of gradually coast into what he's going to become. And it's it feels like when he doesn't have the training wheels, it's just everything's coming apart. And it's I'm almost wondering if it's if you could go back in time, is it do you try to get Allen out of the picture before you even have his rookie season, just to kind of force him into hey, Lowry's the 4, you're going to be you're going to be the 5, and we're just going to, it's not going to be best for us in 2021, but you're going to become the guy we actually want you to be. And that's what I'm kind of becoming more concerned about, is it's not so to be fair, the Cavs are much better with Allen. The Cavs need Allen. That's very clear. Allen's very important. We know what Allen does. Allen's reliable. He's one of the best rim running bigs. It's just that there's a cap on what this team can be as it currently is with 2 non-shooters. And I don't know how you break that cap, because Mobley's not showing the things that you would need for him as a 4 to break that cap. And he's not even close to being a 5. So that kind of puts you in the spot. Do we have to wait 3-4 years before he's actually able to do that? And why would Donovan Mitchell wait until he's 33 before he gets the best version of Evan Mobley?
Well, maybe the best version of Mobley is at the 4, possibly, just to play devil's advocate and counter that. Maybe the best version of Mobley is having a rim running big next to him, and you provide them with enough spacing that it'll work. But that's something that we'll have to see play out. I want to get Corey involved, because we've been He's been on the sideline here. Corey, what have you seen? What has been kind of the biggest impact of not having Allen out there or Garland? Take whichever angle you want.
Well, in a weird way, like Jarrett Allen being back really not only he'll help Evan Mobley in the sense, not to bring it back to Mobley, but like it actually is like the biggest positive that we're not being able to see the amount of defensive versatility that Jarrett Allen allows the other players on the team to have, especially Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley's at his best when he's able to roam free around. They use him in that free safety type of role. Now Evan Mobley is gridlocked to going against the best big on every possession, which, as we've all noted, is definitely not in the cards right now. I mean, he's going against some of the more physically imposing centers through the first 5 games, and he's getting utterly dominated more times than not, to the point where now we're questioning this whole development thing. If Jarrett Allen's there, Jarrett Allen can go toe-to-toe with every big in the league pretty much, except apparently Mitchell Robinson in a 7-game series. But like Jarrett Allen is so important, and I think when you think of him, it's just the constant argument is Jarrett Allen is limited. Your offense will be limited with Jarrett Allen, but your defense becomes like it can expand into different ways. So it's like people love to just focus on the offensive end, and Jarrett Allen is one of those offensive bigs that, yes, he's only good at like probably like you could hone in on 3 skills of his, but he is excellent at all 3. It's like he's not rough around the edges in any, like he's a good rim runner. He's the best, like you said, the best pick setter on the team. And he does a half decent job at grabbing offensive boards, which has been a real struggle for this team, even through 5 games. I know everyone was like, I wonder how the Cavs are going to respond against the Knicks. I hope they can offensive rebound. And then you're like, with who? George Niang and Evan Mobley as your 4 and 5.
Junkyard dog winner, George Niang.
I'm calling.
We are changing the name of our pod.
The George Niang Award.
He had 10 rebounds, man. I think like 4 of those were just Mobley tapping it to him, but they count.
Hey, you know, their participation award. But yeah, Jarrett Allen is, I think he has the biggest disservice going into it. I know like it's easy to think Darius is obviously, and he will make a huge difference offensively, because there's not really anyone kind of setting the table for this offense at this point. It kind of feels like, yes, there is motion. Yes, there's new looks to it, but it still feels like at its core, it's a ISO heavy offense that if stuff starts to if the defense starts to crash, that's when the movement comes in and things open up. But it still kind of feels like when Donovan's out there, it's like, it's my stage. Let's see how it goes. If it doesn't work, that's where the movement's going to come in. But when Darius, it's like, you all know, like everyone knows that his first thing is to look for others, and that's where his mindset is. It's a common argument from his detractors saying that he's too passive at times. He needs to be more aggressive, but that's what helps the offense unlock the way it does. So, I mean, it's funny enough that I looked before we started recording the pod, like who was the best plus or minus on the team last year, and it won to Darius Jarrett. Like in in all facets, like all of their numbers come back positive impact to like an astounding amount. I'm not going to tell you who third was because it's Jackson's favorite player, Jetty Osman.
We all the listeners.
I'm surprised he wasn't first.
I mean, they account for the cold nights.
He had some. I think it was like his plus minus started looking bad at like March. So I stopped doing that thread that I was doing about like Cavs are because like he had a couple games where he was just like a minus like 20, and I was like, we're killing. And that's the thing
agenda. with Jetty's plus minus is like if Jetty's not helping the team, he was just moved to the bench right away. So the minus never really piled on. But if he's doing good, you're like, dude, play him 30 minutes tonight, like just keep it going. So, but I do want to jump on the Jarrett Allen point there too, just like with his impact on offense. He might only average, 14 points per game, but those 14 points are like the easiest 14. It's like a wide open dunk. It's like you drop it off to him and he lays it up, or he gets an offensive putback. And it's like you get 14 of those really easy points a night, and it just helps so much. Those are points right now that they are not getting from anywhere. Even Mobley, I think Mobley's missed a lot of shots that he normally makes, but even then, like that goes back to just the matchups that he's drawing. He's going against bigger players than what he normally would at the 4. And so Jarrett Allen, both sides of the floor, is going to make the Cavs better. Another thing that I want to say before we move off of Allen, or before anyone else, if you have more to say about him, I'm interested to see. Okay. I'm interested to see. I've really enjoyed the Strus Mobley 2-man game. I want to see what kind of work Allen can put in with Strus, because I don't think Allen is on the same level as a playmaker, and he doesn't have the same potential that Mobley does, but I don't think he's too far behind in terms of being a ball handler. I think he's a better screen setter, and I think he has a good enough feel for the game that if you give him reps playing off of Strus, I think he'll be able to contribute a lot there too, in ways that maybe we weren't really expecting. He's only 25, so this is still something that he could carve out into being a part of his game. I'm not saying he's going to excel or be an elite playmaking big, but I think this is an area of his game that I'm interested to see if he can put anything together there.
You know, it's like Strus definitely has the reps where you can tell he knows exactly where he wants his bigs to go. I mean,
he's like leading Mobley down a lot of these plays.
He basically took his Miami game plan and tries to convert it to an offense that, even though Miami's kind of like not the most movement oriented offense, like he made it have much more movement. I mean, I've watched a few Miami games this year. That movement game is like pretty much not there anymore. Bam's pretty much getting a lot of his production from Jimmy Butler or Lowry, and it's not saying a lot. Strus knows how to kind of find those spots, and I think, like you said, like Mobley definitely, like we think of him as the more diverse offensive option, but like I said before, like Allen knows his spots, and he very rarely is going to struggle in his spots. So if Strus knows where Allen likes it, he can easily set up a lot for him. Like the plate, Allen should be like from between Garland, Strus, and Mitchell will have a decent amount of players trying to set him up.
I think Allen's going to benefit more than anyone besides Donovan Mitchell. So the second most of anyone with Strus's spacing, just because he is such a good finisher around the rim, and the vertical spacing he provides is really what keeps this team going. And like, that's why the plus minus is so outrageous, is because there's no vertical threat without him. There's no rim pressure without him. And that's why the conversation always comes back to Mobley. So it's like, that's what the team needs. And this is why, like, Mobley's rookie season, the Cavs were, what were they like after the All-Star break? Like the 4th seed, and then fourth seed, something like that. And then Allen got hurt, and then Mobley had to be the center, and it was like, oh, Mobley can't do that. Let's bring in Moses Brown. Okay, that's weird. Let's not do that. So, like, but then it's like, this season, you were like, okay, they have shooters now. This is something Mobley should be able to, like, he's not Jarrett Allen, but he should be able to approximate some of what Jarrett Allen does best. And that's kind of what's most disappointing.
I do want to use kind of this opportunity, because we were talking about Strus and Mobley, and kind of use that to pivot to Garland a little bit, because I think one thing that we're seeing right now, it's not just that Garland isn't out there. Jerome is also out. The Cavs have no point guard every night so far. It's like, you're seeing Strus. He probably feels like he's back in Miami, where it's like he has to create for himself a lot more than he was probably expecting when he came to Cleveland. He's been asked to get to the rim more than he probably wants to. His three-point attempts have been very difficult. I think that's why we're seeing some of the variance in his three-point shot here. So he's taking very difficult shots. Even Niang, who I know isn't the most popular Cavs guy right now, but his three-point attempts have been very difficult. If he's playing with Garland, that'll probably get a little easier. Even playing with Allen, that'll make it easier, because, again, the vertical spacing that Allen provides. So I think right now, and it goes deeper than just Strus, too. It's LeVert is trying to play point guard. Mitchell, at this point in his career, I think it's clear that he's not a point guard. He's just a true scorer. Whereas Garland is someone who completely embraces being that game manager. I think Garland's keeping track in his head, like, okay, need to get this guy involved. He hasn't touched the ball in a while. I need to, we're playing a little slow right now. Let me ramp up the pace. Those are things that Mitchell isn't as prioritized with. It's something that LeVert doesn't think of, I don't think. And they're also just not as good playmakers. So when you get Garland back in there, that's why the entire game is just going to feel easier for everyone else.
Totally agree with everything that you said. But I have like a concern that like Allen and Garland almost feel like band-aids for what Mobley and like Mitchell should be doing, but aren't capable of doing yet. And them acting as a Band-Aid like helps during the regular season, but we saw in the playoffs, like, I think like people dunk on Jarrett Allen metaphorically. What about his, like, the lights were too bright, but he wasn't he was bad. But he wasn't the reason the Cavs were getting beat up down low. He wasn't the reason.
He was talking about everyone in that quote too, I think.
Right. And he was like the issue was Mobley getting pushed around it. And then the issue was also Donovan needing the ball in his hand because he's by far the best scorer on the team, but not being able to like do anything when they send 4 guys his way. And Darius Garland is very good, but he's not one of the best 4 or 5 scorers in the whole world. So it's just kind of like, for the Cavs to get over the hump, they need Mobley and like Mitchell to kind of like take them over the hump in like a playoff setting. And that's kind of, I think that's what's the most like frustrating, because I just don't, just because of like, I really believe in Darius Garland, but it's like, it's just so hard when someone's that small to be a big playoff impact player. Like, even if we're talking about like, I think the best comparison is Steve Nash, just from, because like Curry is, people like to sometimes
just on
Curry,
level.
but Curry's also 6'4". Like Darius is like
he's put on a good amount of muscle over the years.
Yeah,
from 2015 to now. Like, you're not really bullying him as much as it seems.
He's a lot bigger than really like Garland is. So it's like, I think Steve Nash is kind of that comparison, and these are kind of similar problems that Steve Nash ran into in the playoffs too, when teams could get more physical with them. And it's like the way around it is Mitchell needs to be the guy on ball who can do something, and he's just kind of like, that just hasn't really been what he's been able to do. And that's I think what the most frustrating part of this whole beginning of the season is you see the flaws of, I think, their 2 most important players very clearly.
And I don't disagree with that. I'm 100% on board. I guess just the counter that I would offer is that when this team was first kind of built together, I think most of us were, or at least I'll speak for myself, I think the blueprint has always been closer to like a 2004 Detroit Pistons thing, where it's like they don't have that one guy who's the superstar, who's the MVP guy, but they have a bunch of really talented stars, fringe all-star types of guys who just complement each other really well. And I think it's up for debate whether or not this core group complements each other to perfection. Right. But I do think you can see where Mobley lacks, Allen kind of provides the help. Where Mitchell lacks, Garland provides some help. And so I think if that's the vision for this team, then that's what you have to hope to see, that they will kind of make up for each other's weaknesses. But that's not like, listen, there's a reason why the 2004 Pistons are like the only team I can think of that did that, because it's really, really hard to win a championship. Even if you have LeBron, it's hard to win a championship. If you're trying to do it with 4 non-MVP caliber guys, you need a lot of luck and a lot of things to break the right way.
I think it's interesting also that, like, I definitely agree with you that they do really complement each other really well, but also like it's a fine line between they complement each other well and hide everything, or they have the worst of both worlds, where like because that's why the Knicks series was so awful, because they had the problems that a team that has too many, like 2 bigs who can't do anything. They had the problems, but they didn't have the benefits because they just got absolutely bullied. And then a team with 2 small guards in the backcourt that are like have a lot of on-ball juice should be just being a high-powered offense and getting them through like slogs, but they just couldn't do anything because there was no spacing, and then they were picked on the other end. You know, you saw for some reason Darius Garland was guarding Jalen Brunson and just getting absolutely cooked. So that's a separate conversation, but it's like,
sounds like just a Okoro bat signal coming out of Jackson right there.
Not an Okoro bat signal, but it's more of just like, if you're getting the worst of both worlds, how do you get the best of both worlds instead? And that's what it's like. So if we're gonna, does Strus allow them to get the best of both worlds? Is this just matchup dependent? Is it just the Knicks had some weird voodoo that was just messing with the Cavs. And that's kind of the thing about the season. We have to see something to make us believe that wasn't
who they are.
Right.
I think it would be when I think of the Knicks series, though, I feel like it was just the answer throughout the regular season was kind of right in front of the fans' eyes offensively. I feel like a lot of the season was predicated on, God, I hope Donovan has like a really good game so we can trudge by the rest of the team not performing or coming close to his level. And then when it comes to the postseason, all the Knicks game plan has to be is let's hone in on Donovan and hope everyone else, like basically beg everyone else to beat us offensively. And they couldn't. The toughness thing was the thing I think that got me the most shocked in that series. The fact that the Knicks their identity was smeared all over that game. And they brought, the Cavs weren't an offensive juggernaut, but they brought them down to a pace that just made it so each possession was like a bloodbath. And if it's going to be Donovan, God, I hope you can bail us out. Oh, your shot's not going to fall at an insane rate? Well, guess we're fucked. And then that's pretty much how every game went. Except for the one game 2 where Darius showed up.
They just came out hot early on.
Right.
And it was just it wasn't I left that game being oh, that was a great one-off game, but I don't expect the Cavs to look at the game film and be okay, if we do this for 3 more games, we'll win. Because that's not something that they showed they could do throughout the whole season. That would have been a miracle run.
I keep coming back to game 2. Because I thought game 2 was the blueprint. Donovan Mitchell had 12 assists that game. He said, you're going to come at me. That means Jarrett Allen's wide open. You're going to come at me. Someone else is open. And it's that's the blueprint. You need Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley, the 2 guys on your team that don't have these caps on how impactful they can be because they're just so skilled in other areas. And they have the potential to be the best players in the league, honestly. They have the skill set to be top 10 players, both of them. But if they don't kind of correct those issues, then it's this team feels like it's just going to end up in the same place, just maybe to a different team. Even if they don't lose to the Knicks, it's another team that, uses this blueprint against them.
Not to sound pessimistic, but I just feel I don't see a world in which Donovan's gonna operate as this Harden-esque style player where yes, he can get his own, but he's also gonna be in the mindset of looking for others. I think, I'm not saying he's not a good passer or he doesn't see the floor. He obviously can. It's just I feel his mentality, at least through what we've seen, is it kind of feels he operates best in his mind when he's just the one just pushing all the buttons. And if it falls with him, it falls with him. And that Knicks game, that's why I didn't feel that confident it was going to translate going forward. I was yeah, this is a really great blueprint, but I haven't seen anything from Donovan Mitchell where he's going to show that throughout an entire stretch of games. It's just and then that's not him acknowledging it and moving past it. I just think, when you've been in the league for as long as Mitchell was, it's you're kind of hardwired one way. And yes, you can figure out a way to problem solve on the fly, but you're going to just soft reset game to game, I feel
I think the problem is it's almost I think he rightfully believes that the best chance his team has for winning is for him to just go and do it himself. And there's nothing that he's gone through that would make me think otherwise if I was in his spot. For example, the second half of Tuesday's game, when the Knicks were just, every time there was a screen set, it was we're just going to put 2 on the ball and make somebody else beat us. He passed it out to Evan Mobley, and Evan just wasn't able to problem solve the way that he needs to. So if he can't problem solve, Donovan's not going to keep like LeBron would make the right basketball play over and over again until it eventually works. Donovan's not wired that way, I feel and it's kind
he's
of
quicker to call his own number.
Right. And he's been in situations with the Jazz where they've had similar problems where it's okay, well, I can't trust Rudy Gobert to do anything when it matters, so I'm just going to do it myself. And it's that's where it's what's the problem? Is it the chicken or the egg? is if Evan Mobley was able to problem solve like we think he has the skill set to do, does Donovan not just do everything that we've seen him do? You know, and that's where it's like, that's why I just think Evan is just so important to everything about this team when it comes to this season, when it comes to next season, when it comes to Donovan Mitchell re-signing or not re-signing. I think it all just comes back to Evan.
Well, I feel like when it comes to Donovan, I feel like I think there's more room, obviously, for Mobley to grow, and I feel like his ceiling is going to make more of a difference than Donovan's. I feel like Donovan is heading towards being that final product, and you kind of can tell from roster construction of the Jazz that they also kind of saw that that's how it was. Like, Donovan was never going to transform into that type of player that was going to be able to like set up for others. I mean, if you look at roster acquisitions they literally had Ricky Rubio, Mike Conley, Joe Ingles, and all three do the same thing where it's, we're going to take the passing off of Donovan, let him siphon in on scoring, and if he gives us anything, great.
I don't disagree with that point, but I don't think he needs to be like a savant passer to get to where he needs to be. He just needs to be able to like trust his teammates and need to have a teammate worth trusting when they send the double team his way. Because like what we saw at the end of the Knicks series and what we kind of saw some on Tuesday and even Wednesday, because his shot wasn't falling in the second half. Like when they do double team him, he's just trying to like, it's like he's playing 21, trying to get it up before like, oh, the third guy is coming. Well, let me get this up before you get here. So it's like, that's what we want to see, is him like trusting that somebody else can problem solve and allow him to still be the scorer that he is. And like, he just hasn't been on a team where somebody else can do that. And like, I don't think that's Darius Garland just from a limitation standpoint. I think that needs to be a big because of how reliant and how comfortable Mitchell is operating off of like high pick and rolls.
I do want the disclaimer though that like through like the 5 games that have been played, like we haven't been able to judge whether that this roster is going to allow Donovan to do that yet, because it's been so in flux. Like we could be having this conversation, like a completely different conversation a month later, being like, this roster makes sense, and Donovan is doing things differently than how he had to do through the first 5 games when it pretty much feels like a worse version of last year, where we're just battered and we're throwing out our two-way guys as first people off the bench, and we're walking away from games being like, man, you know, Tristan Thompson's got some legs. I mean, like, this is
I think he does though.
But he actually does, is the craziest part of that statement.
I know, but I'm saying like we wouldn't have this conversation period if we didn't have the injuries that we have. Like, I think the Cavs were thinking Tristan Thompson, you know, culture guy, great. If we get like, if we have to do the roll, great. The fact that we're being like, Tristan Thompson, God, please grab rebounds for us. That would be great. And we're walking away being like, this is the best case scenario. I don't think if you gave Kobe Altman truth serum, he ever saw a situation in which this was happening.
Yeah, I think you wanted to see Tristan Thompson. The idea was we're going to see Tristan Thompson more in like the timeout videos where he's like talking to little kids or like picking his favorite candy bars.
Now he's doing both. He's a two-way player.
Right, yeah.
Basically. True two-way.
Because that's like what like Robin Lopez was like last year. Like Robin Lopez, why don't you like do karaoke night for the fans?
Oh, he was undefeated in the timeout games where they play with the fans. He was undefeated. But I do think this is a good point to wrap up on, because for all the very fair questions that we need to see answered, I think we all agree that we just want to see the team healthy so that they can answer them one way or another. We got to see this team that we were all excited for in the summer actually get a chance to play together at full strength. So I'm looking forward to it. We'll be covering it as it happens, as it unfolds. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening. Please consider subscribing. And as always, go Cavs.
I agree. Go Cavs.